Detzel?
Here.
Mrs. Detzel?
Here.
Mr. Teeswart?
Here.
Mr. Yoshimura?
Here.
Thank you, Amy. Okay, first up is a special presentation on COVID protocols.
Yeah, so Kiva, Bryce, and myself will provide an update on where we are with our COVID protocols for the year. So as we move into the 21-22 school year, we obviously want to keep a focus on a safe and healthy learning environment, making sure that we have the ability to remain flexible and responsive as we move through the unprecedented times we're in. We know that we are prioritizing and students benefit from in-person learning, so returning to that instructional model is a priority for us as a district. We are continuing to make data-informed decisions with a focus on healthy, safe environments. And we will continue to engage all of our stakeholders in the process as we move forward to make sure that we are getting input from all of the people involved. One of the things that we do look at is our local health data. So we do track different metrics. So I'm going to let Kiva kind of talk about where we are as a local county.
So we depend on Hamilton County Public Health to provide us with the statistics we need to make our decisions. Just as an update to anyone who's not abreast of this information, year to date in Hamilton County, we've had 52,288 COVID cases. Actively on the 5th, when we created this presentation, we had about 2,500 active cases in the county. Currently, we are seeing increases of about 60 to 75 positive cases per day. And year to date deaths in Hamilton County were about 925.
So we do look at countywide data, but we are able to drill down into specific zip codes to try to track what's happening in our local municipalities.
In Ohio, in terms of vaccination compliance, individuals who are fully vaccinated, meaning they've gotten a dose of Johnson & Johnson and they're 2 weeks out, or they've gotten 2 doses of either the Moderna or Pfizer vaccination, we're at about 46% statewide. As a comparison, we're at about 51% as a county. So our county compliance is a lot higher than the state compliance levels.
So just to kind of look at guidance that has been coming out throughout the summer, one of the places that has issued guidance has been the CDC. Most recently is August 4th, and even kind of share kind of where they are with where their thought in terms of guidance around masking.
So the CDC has given some directive to school districts, and they would like for us to promote vaccination for anyone who is able and eligible to get the vaccination. So that would be anyone 12 or older. They would like for masks to be worn individuals, and that recommendation changed from masks should be worn by individuals who are vaccinated to masks should be worn by individuals regardless of vaccination status. They also are advising about 3 feet of physical distance. We are mandated to continue screening, testing, and contact tracing, quarantines, and the isolations that follow from those processes. The advice is to continue hand washing, respiratory etiquette, and staying home when sick. These talk about, there's an emphasis on layered prevention strategies, so multiple layers to provide protection against COVID-19. And localities should monitor community transmission, vaccination coverage, screening, testing, and occurrence of outbreaks in the community.
Also, in late July, the American Academy of Pediatrics came out with some similar guidelines around promoting vaccines and masks being worn indoors by all individuals, regardless of that vaccination status, which mirrors the most recent guidance from CDC. And then again, they continue to push a multi-pronged layered approach with different layers of protection. And then the Ohio Department of Health at the end of July came out.
They came out end of July. Their guidance mirrors all of the other agencies, CDC, AAP. Push vaccines for eligible individuals, so 12 or older. Anyone who did not get the vaccine, their guidance is that they should consistently wear masks. Proper ventilation and sanitation efforts should continue, and that's consistent with that layered approach all of the agencies advise.
So in addition to these different areas of health that have been issuing guidance, we also have guidance from our legislative body in the state of Ohio. So legislatures weighed in, and Governor DeWine signed House Bill 244. House Bill 244 basically says that schools are prohibited from also says that schools cannot discriminate against those not vaccinated by making them do different activities than their unvaccinated peers. So it creates a situation where rules have to be consistent across the board. Introduced, but no action has been taken yet, is Senate Bill 209. That Senate bill would actually block public schools from issuing any kind of mask mandate, but would allow local departments of health to do that, and so they could mandate it for the entire county. No traction has been moved on that one yet, but we do have to operate under House Bill 244. With that being said, we actually have engaged our staff around different options. Because of House Bill 244, we basically have a couple of options. We have the option that we can go fully masked for everyone, irregardless of their vaccination status, or we can be mask optional. When we survey our staff, the 1 is basically not in favor of, the 5 is in favor of. This is for universal masking, which means everybody in the school system, staff member, student, wear masks at all times, regardless of vaccination status. And you saw that the majority of our staff do not support that option. When we look at mask optional, we have over 60% of our staff who have said they prefer a mask optional approach to masking and moving forward with that. We also did the same survey with our parents. So with our parents, universal masking across the board, everybody wear masks. It's kind of split in terms of about half and half who are for or against universal masking. We do have the ability to differentiate universal masking based on age. So we could say all elementaries and middle schools where vaccines are not eligible for that student population are masked, but high schools where there are vaccines available for that age population of students go unmasked. Our parents on this one basically came out and said we don't like that option. When we asked our parents about mask optional and said where do you land on mask optional for all staff and all students, again, around 60% said that they support this option. So as a district, we have to look at layers of protection. And so we talked about putting in various layers to try to make sure students are protected and staff are protected against the spread of COVID-19. So one of the things that we have done this summer is upgrade our ventilation systems and added these bipolar ionization units that help kill airborne viruses and bacteria. And we also upgraded our controls to allow more frequent circulation of air, so air is replaced within classrooms and buildings at a higher rate to make sure that we have the cleanest air circulating in the buildings. Cleaning protocols, we implemented a lot of very strict cleaning protocols last year. We will continue those protocols this year where all of our staff are contributing to that effort. We do have cleaning supplies in every classroom available so that those desks can be wiped off frequently. And then making sure that our staff are actually giving special attention to those high touch points. Rails, doorknobs, different things that are frequently touched, making sure the bathrooms are clean routinely. So we'll continue those increased cleaning protocols throughout the year, which is another layer of protection. In terms of masking, as a district, we're going to follow some of the guidelines that say we recommend it, but we're not going to mandate it. It is a mask option, so families and staff members will be able to choose whether they want to mask or not. So that will be where we land as a district. We will ensure that no matter what choice staff members or students make and families make with their students, that is a respected choice in our school community. And so whether someone chooses to mask or not to mask, that choice will be respected by everyone in the school community. The one caveat that is different, the CDC and the U.S. Department of Transportation do have a rule in place that mandates masks by everyone on public transportation. So if you were going to be on a metro bus or on an airplane, you would have to wear a mask. School buses do fall under that guidelines. So our students and our transportation staff on school buses will have to wear masks. So students who are riding Northwest buses and vans will have to wear a mask while they're on that transportation. So that is the one change to that policy. that's a little bit different. We will continue to try to maximize social distancing. We know our priority is to bring students back to in-person learning, and our classrooms are only so big. But we will continue to try to maximize social distancing and allow people space as much as we possibly can based on the environment that our staff and our students are in. One thing that hasn't changed is the need for us to be able to contact trace. That means making sure that we have seating charts when students are in classrooms or in different areas, so that we know who is seated next to whom, so we can contact trace that. So those seating charts will be implemented in all places, in the buildings, buses, and classrooms. When we talk about contact tracing, there are two different terms. One is isolation and one is quarantine. So we do still have to follow the Ohio Department of Health guidelines because they still are contact tracing and quarantining. I'm going to let Kiva define the difference between isolation and quarantine.
So in a contact tracing situation, there are two parties involved. So there's the positive individual. That person will be isolated, which means they will be at home. Even when no symptoms are present, they have a positive test. They get 10 days out. Individuals who are quarantined are considered close contacts, or it could be a household member who is positive. These individuals will be required to quarantine following those DOH guidelines, and currently that stands at 10 days with some options for early return based on a test result. So there are some options to shorten that period, but it does involve testing at a facility.
So just to give some context of what this would look like, we kind of have a chart, and this was pushed out to our parents today, but we want to kind of talk through several situations just because we want people to be surprised. So on the left side, you see the COVID positive individual. I just want to clarify, when we talk about these quarantines on the right, the COVID positive individual is under isolation status. So when we talk about whether someone's being quarantined or not, it does not indicate that left side of the chart. That person is automatically in isolation. So we're talking about the potentially exposed individual and what their quarantine status would be.
So the easiest way to kind of navigate these quarantine situations, if you can imagine two kids in a classroom setting, one of those individuals tests positive. So if you take the first line here, if the COVID positive individual wore a mask and a potentially exposed individual who was within that 6-foot radius, they would be a close contact, right? So because that individual wore their mask, they will not have to quarantine, okay? In the next situation down, neither one of the parties wore a mask, and that will require that individual who we consider exposed and a close contact will be quarantined. The third situation down, there's your COVID positive individual who is wearing a mask, but your potentially exposed individual does not wear a mask, and he will be quarantined. And again, on the bottom, no mask for our COVID positive individual, but our potentially exposed person who was within that 6-foot radius was wearing his mask, so he will not be required to quarantine.
So short version of that is if you are COVID positive, it doesn't matter if you're wearing a mask or not, you are isolated. If you are exposed to a COVID positive individual and you are wearing a mask, you will avoid quarantine. If you are unmasked, you will be subject to quarantine guidelines through the Ohio Department of Health. So we just want to make sure that as we talk about our mask optional policy, we want everyone to have all the information as they make personal choices for their self and their families. With that, do the board members have any questions for us?
I just have one question. How will that affect the outside or indoor athletic activities as far as parents coming or fans coming and musicals within the schools? Are we going to still social distance in those situations?
We're going to continue to socially distance at all times. So if there's the possibility that you can put some space between you and another family, we ask that people continue to do so. It will not deter those activities, holding those activities. And again, the rules that we have for our students in the class will also apply to events in our buildings.
How about the visiting teams? Will they be informed of this policy that we have?
Yeah, so as our athletic departments are working through the scheduling, all of the different athletics and performing arts groups
As far as staffing wise, I know we had some staff that, for health reasons, they opted for the virtual learning experience. How is that panning out, and how will this decision affect our staffing model?
So our staffing has been focused on bringing students back to in-person learning. We do have our several options with blended or online that are available. The state in July changed the rules around blended and online, so those options are more restricted than they have been in the past. So we are basically working through that with each building administrator. With the kind of advent of the information today, we expect that we may have some phone calls from parents who have questions or concerns about what their next steps are with their child based on what they see as most safe.
And what has gone out, or what will be going out here?
There is a communication with all parents about hour and a half, 2 hours ago, and it was a statement that basically said where we were with a PDF of a presentation that goes through a lot of what we went through today with some very specific information in there for parents. So they have all the information that you have now, so that we can all be on the same page.
Great.
And how many students are doing the blended and online? About?
So blended is a little bit different because our alternative programs, Northwest Passage, which is Transition Academy, is considered blended.
Okay.
Our online is K-8, and it is a fully online school, and that actually is about 82 kids.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Just, thank you for the presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
you for your collaboration with the staff and the parents to, see what they.
We appreciate everyone that actually submitted the survey. We had over 5,000 parents who completed the survey. So it was obviously an important issue to our parents, and we appreciate the input that we got from them. And then I just want to say that I appreciate all the work that Kiva's done around the clock to make sure that we stay abreast of all of the changing guidance, because it has evolved sometimes multiple times in the same week, and she has been on top of it the whole time. The only thing that we didn't say around the quarantines is vaccine status. Someone who is fully vaccinated does not have to be quarantined. So our students at the age 12 and up who are fully vaccinated also, regardless of mask situation, would not be quarantined, and staff members alike.
And so we do ask that if we find ourselves in those situations, which we will, with vaccinated individuals who are considered close contacts potentially, that they continue to monitor through that 14-day period, because we know you can still develop symptoms during that period. So just more heightened monitoring, more awareness, but they can continue to come to school and participate in their extracurriculars.
Masks and vaccines are layers of protection. They're not guarantees.
Sure. So so if you need my proof of vaccination, is that something that you're going to collect from kids at the beginning of the year, or just as the situations arise, you'll have to show us proof of vaccination?
We ask that as parents update their student information in Registration Gateway, and you send in your vaccination records. If you haven't, send it. If we find ourselves in that situation, it's part of the contact tracing process. So we'll ask, make the call and say, hey, potentially your child was exposed. Do you have any proof of vaccination that you can provide to us at this time?
Okay.
All right. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Kiva.
Thanks, Kiva. Okay, next item on the agenda is legislative updates.
Okay. There hasn't been too much recently because they've been on summer recess. Just a handful of bills that have been in the early stages, recently introduced legislation. But going back to our last regular meeting where I had a legislative update was all the way back to June 28th. We have, so back in July, the Fair School Funding Plan became the school funding formula when Governor DeWine signed House Bill 110. And then I think some of this was already explained in the COVID-19 update about the Governor DeWine on signing the House Bill 244 about the vaccine, prohibiting schools from mandating a vaccine, prohibiting schools from discriminating against individuals with a vaccine. He also then signed into law required K through 12 schools to allow military children who are relocating but not yet residents of a district to enroll electronically and participate in technology-based educational opportunities. And that would be all I had.
Great, thanks. Anybody have any questions
Thank you.
for Matt? Okay, student achievement liaison report.
We do not have any tonight, but look forward to next meeting.
Great, thank you, Pam. Butler Tech update?
Nothing tonight, Mark.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Do we have any reports from any employee organizations?
I don't have any.
No. And that brings us to community communications. So just update everybody on our policy here. Policy 0169.1. The Northwest Board of Education welcomes the opportunity to listen to Northwest local school district residents' comments, suggestions, concerns on educational issues. It is important to remember that the board conducts the meetings in public, but the meetings are not a public forum. The intent of the meeting is to allow the board to complete needed business. Northwest Board of Education meetings are conducted using Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised. Most matters which fall under the jurisdiction of the board may be addressed during the community comments section in the order of business. The board will not discuss negotiations or personnel items in an open session. Any concerns or comments about individuals ought to be brought to the attention of administration. A school district cannot discuss personal student information, whether or not discipline was imposed on a student, nor the reason for a decision because of disclosure would be a violation of state and federal law. The following guidelines will be used for public commentary for board meetings. Individuals wishing to address the board must complete and submit a request to speak form to the board president prior to the beginning of the meeting. Individuals will preface their comments by announcement of their name, address, and group affiliation if applicable. Each person will be given 3 minutes to speak on agenda items of any topic during community comments. Public commentary is confined to that portion of the agenda. Individuals will be recognized to speak once on a given topic. All statements will be directed to the presiding officer. No person may individually address or question board members, district administration, or members of the public in attendance. No response to the speaker will occur from board members, district administration, or members of the public in attendance during that time. Appropriate follow-up by district administration may occur at a later time if warranted. No more than 15 minutes will be devoted to public participation unless the board votes unanimously to continue discussion. Repetitive statements may be ruled out of order by the presiding officer. The presiding officer has the right to terminate the participation of any individual if the person violates the rules of good order. Laws of Ohio determine the powers and duties of the Board of Education, the superintendent, and the CFO treasurer. And with that long-winded statement, we have 5 folks that have submitted a request to address the board, and the first one is Rose Inderhees.
Good evening.
Hi.
My name is Rose Inderhees. My husband Tom and I have been residents of Coleraine for 46 years. I'm here tonight to talk about critical race theory, which is also referred to sometimes as CRT. Over the course of the last several months, there's been a lot of talk about the concepts of critical race theory and what is commonly referred to as diversity, equity, inclusion, also known as DEI. I know what some of you are thinking. They're not the same. Don't be fooled. They are intertwined and eventually show themselves to be. The theory of CRT and the concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion tie directly into cultural Marxism. The teaching of CRT tells our children that if they are a child of color, they are oppressed. If you're not, then you're considered an oppressor. If you don't own this and say that you're an oppressor, you will be labeled as a racist. This is not what we should be teaching our children. Recently, Northwest Schools had a group called the Racial Equity Institute, hired a group called the Racial Equity Institute. This was initially started here saying it would be helping with hiring practices. That was their foot in the door. They have already begun a training called the Groundwater Approach. I assure you this has nothing to do with hiring practices. If you look at the bios online for their institute, you will find a racial equity trainer, a designer of anti-oppression strategies, a man interested in racial equity work, and a trainer working to incorporate racial equity principles. They're going to help teach our children to hate each other and to hate America. Here at Northwest, we have our own diversity, equity, inclusion leadership team. I would venture to say that most of them don't realize that this is tied into critical race theory. There was a woman conducting Zoom meetings for our school district that has this quote on her Twitter page: "Equity, beyond the buzzword. We should be asking ourselves every day, what did I do today to disrupt and dismantle racist and oppressive systems?" Does this bother you? It does bother me. The website on the Racial Equity Institute states that it talks about the groundwater approach, which is a program for 2 days, which I understand that we've had here in our district. It ranges in price from $5,000 to $8,000, but they also state on the website that they would like to normally be with your group for 18 to 24 months. I'd like to know really how much are we going to pay for that, and what type of indoctrination are we going to receive for that money. I've spoken directly with Cindy Abrams and Bill Blessings, our state representatives. They will have a bill in front of them to vote on this fall, HB 322. They feel confident it will pass. What can we do? We can support the candidates who are openly against CRT. We can ask candidates and our school board members to sign the 1776 pledge. One of our school members has already done it, and one of our candidates, Nicole Talby, has already signed it. We can let everyone know our children are not available for taking. We can teach the Declaration of Independence. It will teach all of our children they are equal. We can change our focus from DEI to more creative ways to teach history and science, geography, arts, and all of our basic courses. We can have the school board, teachers, administrators, parents, and community work together to lift up all of our students and help them to become loving, kind, productive,
Rose, are you
patriotic
close to being
citizens. Our children are not available for taking. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next is Christine Colliver.
Good evening. I want to start with my kudos first. Thank you so much for allowing parents to make the choice for masks this school year, starting off. We'll see where it goes. I also would like to give kudos out to Mr. Gator and also Brenda Miller. Over the last several weeks, I have met with Daryl, and I had told him I had some concerns over some things in the Diversity and Equity Committee that I was invited to join. And after having a very open and honest conversation with him, I felt confident that CRT was not in our curriculum. But I wouldn't be doing my due diligence as a parent if I didn't do some more investigation. And so that prompted me to reach out to Brenda. And I requested all ELA, SEL, and history curriculum currently being used in our classrooms. I also requested a list of books that were removed as well as added to our libraries as it related to the work of the Diversity and Equity Committee. And she provided this information in a timely fashion. And so thank you so much for your transparency and honesty. Now to my concerns. As I looked over the list of books that went into, we had 3 libraries that received new books this school year. That's Colerain High School, Northwest High School, and White Oak Middle School. There was one book that was added to all 3 libraries. And that book was stamped Racism, Anti-Racism, and You, which are co-authored by Jason Reynolds and Ibram X. Kendi. This book has caused controversy in school districts across the country, as well as one locally here that I'm aware of. There could be more. Kendi is an anti-racist activist who is on record stating that he considers CRT, critical race theory, to be foundational to his work. This book, at its core, creates a worldview that blames Western Europeans, or whiteness, for all of America's racial problems. At a time when we, as a district, are banding together to embrace our beautifully diverse community, there is no place for this book in that mission. I am requesting that this book be removed from our libraries. Moving forward as a collective and putting our children's best interests first, I am asking that our board members sign the 1776 pledge to take a stand against critical race theory in our schools. And I submitted those pledges to you prior to the meeting, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Chrissy. Next is Dawn Lahmer.
Hello,
Hi. It is Dawn, correct?
it is Dawn, thank you. I'm Dawn Lahmeyer. I live on Pool Road, which is right across the street from the high school. I've lived there 20 years, and prior to that, I lived in another house in Colerain Township for 20 years, so I've been here a long time. I have seen the acronym CRT defined as critical race theory, critical race theology, and culturally responsible teaching. Any way you define it, it is a made-up political tool that is designed to teach our children to either identify themselves as oppressors, a victim, or an activist. The theory has been around for years in university settings and ideological discussions, but has been brought to the forefront of public attention recently as political indoctrination and dogma. But make no mistake, CRT, no matter how you define it, is political propaganda and has absolutely no place in our children's classrooms. CRT is a suggestive curriculum designed to brainwash our children to believe that this amazing republic of the United States of America was founded on tyranny and repression, when in fact that is the exact opposite of why our forefathers and millions of people still today come to the USA. People from all over the world may have always immigrated to the United States to escape tyranny and repression, to seek a better life for themselves and their children, founded on our individual uniqueness and freedoms. CRT would take us back to what our parents, grandparents, and now great-grandparents fought so hard during both World War I and World War II to escape and avoid. Dictatorial men and women who thought that some people's ethnicity, religion, or race were superior to other ethnicities, religions, or race. This is not what we want to teach our children. This is not what I want my hard-earned school tax dollars to support and encourage in the Northwest School District classrooms. The key to this future is a consistently well-balanced education that teaches children the basics of reading, writing, and arithmetic, as well as how to make choices in their lives that are positive and productive, because they all feel proud of the accomplishments of their parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents. Children also need to feel good about and have pride in being a citizen of such a productive and diverse country. They need to understand their positive role and responsibilities in the success of the USA. To accomplish this, schools must bring us all together to learn and succeed, not tear us apart to struggle and fail. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next is Diane Bradley.
I originally came here to speak about mass and the current position that the district is taking on those. I saw the one presentation where it showed that it was pretty much split as far as having an option and having them required. And my stance really comes from kind of like, kind of CRT, but with a history lesson. We're here today, August 9th of 2021, and I want to take us back exactly 1 year to August 9th of 2020. There were no vaccinations. When it comes to the schools, students had no vaccinations, but as far as the school district, they were required, they were about to go into school, and everyone was required to wear a mask. I'm asking, we're here now 1 year later, there's still no vaccinations for 12 and under, but the district has taken a different approach. What is different from 1 year now, from 1 year ago to now? There were no vaccines for the 12 and under last year, masks were required. We're in 2021, August 9th, there's still no vaccinations, but there's a different approach. Why? We're putting, as far as like taking the chance to come to the students and give them the best opportunity in the safest schools environment is for them to have masks on, just like we did last year. There's nothing different, specifically at elementary level, last year to this year. So why is your decision different? That's the end of what I'm going to say on masks. I am going to go ahead and jump in and add on, get a bonus here about CRT. I feel unfortunately that a lot of people at the podium have been misinformed about CRT and the history that is currently being taught in the school districts and have been taught up until this point, until this current day, in most of our schools, and specifically ours, that we're not looking to downgrade what has happened, we're looking to be more inclusive. There is a lot that has been eliminated from the history books that have been taught in the school districts, and we're looking for it to be more inclusive and representative of the school or students that actually attend the schools here in our district. So as far as CRT, I'm not going to go into the very specifics of it, but it's just one option or one opportunity to include more of what truly is American history, and not just 1 month a year that one demographic is being taught, that actually throughout the school year we get to teach other Americans other than those of a European base. So I hope that we take into consideration including information that's not just European-based history, or a month or two, or a phrase or two, or a week or here, or a subject or a chapter, that actually the history does represent what brought us here as far as Americans as a whole. That's all.
Okay. Thank you, Diane. And our last speaker is Gwen Wostrak.
I've got 2 wonderful boys in the district that are upset that I'm here tonight, but it's not up to them. Thank you for having me here. I understand that CRT is not completely into our curriculum right now, but I'm here as a concern that it potentially can be. What most people don't realize is that our culture is in the midst of a race war. Our culture, our schools, and our children are at risk of being put in the middle of this war. When you introduce any form of critical race theory, which literally teaches us to divide others based on race, identification, and social classification, you become no different than someone who chooses to wear a white hood. CRT is a sick attempt of correcting the overinflated issues of race in our world today, and only gives birth to a new, more insidious type of racism. If we all reflect for a moment, you'd soon realize that this is also how Germany operated not too long ago. This is the danger of how even the thought of entertaining such a curriculum could lead to a more disastrous outcome. We live in a constant season of social and racial correction, which asks us to reanalyze the teachings of Martin Luther King as outdated or unreliable. Martin Luther King's ideology wasn't too far off from another great teacher whom I follow, Jesus. Jesus taught us to love love our neighbors as ourselves. And I understand that I'm not speaking to a parochial school board, and I also understand that those in the audience may not believe the same as I. But on the most basic human level, it's a flawless representation of how others should be seen and treated. Anything outside of that teaches us to see each other based on color or separate one another based on social or economic classifications, and that's the opposite of this basic teaching. Our culture has changed so much that in just a short time, that if I admit to you in front of the school board that I'm not a racist, society wants me to believe that I am. If I say that I don't see color, society wants to convince me that I must have unconscious bias rooted deep within. Society tries to teach me that by my God-given skin color being white, I'm guilty. Society even attempts the idea that a white infant born just moments ago was born a racist. The idea of CRT is nonsensical, and yet districts around our nation dance around the idea of this being introduced in our schools. We have a voice, and we do not agree to any proposed curriculum from the union which threatens our innate beliefs. Furthermore, many teachers are left with their hands tied behind their backs and mouths taped because if they speak up in opposition, their jobs are immediately at risk. They don't know what to do or where to start, so I want to encourage those teachers to break away from the union. You don't have to pay into something that you don't agree with. And speaking of unions, much of CRT's proposed curriculum has been approved through NEA, which is the National Education Association. As of July 6th, the NEA has publicly embraced critical race theory and will move forward with promoting its use in all K through 12 public schools across the country. But since that announcement on July 6th, they've also removed all of the materials from its annual meeting website, so you can no longer review what business they held. That's a little revealing and also disturbing. We have a right to know what they propose as a whole. And with NEA embracing and encouraging CRT, how are we to trust that Northwest School District won't try to sneak this in without warning? What many don't realize about NEA is that it's largely monetized by Democratic representatives and entities which have become both extremely progressive and radicalized over the past few years.
When are you close to be done?
I can be.
Okay.
I promise not to make this into a political issue other than to draw attention to the money and power that's behind the scenes of the curriculum that is introduced and how it eventually makes it into our children's classroom. I'd be remiss to remind everyone that the NEA has been responsible for the very recent curriculum failure of Common Core. Since Common Core's introduction, children have suffered and struggled while academic goals have fallen. It's hard to trust the teachers' union to have our children's best interests in mind when their goals have shifted to cater to the money and organizations from which their money flows. It's also hard to speak in front of the school board when the district has given us the illusion in the past of having a voice or opinion, like in the matters of narrow grade range, only to realize it was simply a smokescreen for an agenda that had already been decided. I don't want this evening to be a repeat or a feel-good, glad they allowed me to share this evening, kind of night, only to have the rug pulled out of us someday in the future where we hear the announcement of eventual introduction of CRT. If this district does not take a firm public stand against the introduction of this new form of racial discrimination, then I strongly encourage parents to monitor classrooms and invite the kids to do the same. Anything less than a written, irrevocable letter of the parents of this district that you will explicitly not be introducing CRT in any form or not to consult with equity and equality entities is nothing short of a silent submission of acceptance of such curriculum, if not now, then eventually. Thank you.
Thank you for everybody who came and spoke. This brings us to 6.1, adoption of superintendent consent items.
So on the consent items tonight, for personnel, we have 9 resignations or retirements, 20 initial appointments, 10 change in statuses. We do have our 2 retiree hires on there, one for Bob Engel as an assistant supervisor of transportation, the other is Patty Daly as an ESL teacher. And then we have 4 handbooks and a new salary schedule for our nurses who are RN with a bachelor's degree. Under business, we have a long list of vendor contracts due to the beginning of the year, including multiple contracts from Hamilton County Educational Service Center, Buddy Rogers, Envision, Children's Home, Coring Township, their SROs, Millennium Business, and then some transportation related. We have donations from Black Blood who are donating to Flood Run Middle School. And then we have handbooks from Student Services for our building handbooks and our student support guidelines, as well as the amendment to our policy around facial coverings. With that, the superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the adoption of the superintendent consent items as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Are there any questions?
I have a comment, just a comment about the retiree hires, if anybody was wondering, that it's 2 positions that we consider difficult to fill. Therefore, you know, that's where we as a board in the past have discussed that retiree hire is going to be reserved for those types of positions. And to make note, Bob Engel in transportation is to help move our transportation department forward. We have a new transportation supervisor and 2 new assistant supervisors. So he's going to help with that transition going forward. So transportation department to me is very important. When things go wrong in transportation, they seem to go horribly wrong. And it's so important that we safely transport our students.
And I will add on to that, that the retiree hire for both Bob and Patty were done earlier in June as an announcement, and then there was a public hearing where people had the opportunity to come and make comment to the board to speak up about their opinion about that. This is the 3rd meeting that we've had this on the agenda.
Yes.
Any other questions? Okay. They pass 5-0. That brings us to fiscal consent items. Amy?
Good evening. First, I'd like to ask the board to dispense with reading of and approve the regular meeting minutes from June 18th, our regular meeting minutes from July 9th, and we had a special meeting with the public hearing on July 12th, as well as a special meeting on July 12th. We had a special meeting on July 15th and another special meeting on July 19th. We also have our financials from the month of June. We were able to close the year at $55 million with our general fund unreserved balance at $32 million. And this was up $1.3 million above our estimates due to our revenues came in at 101%, so we had about $800,000 more than we had expected, and our expenditures were 98%, or almost $2 million less than what we projected due to less in supplies being spent and purchase services. Our weighted average return was 0.53%. This kind of held steady for a couple months. And then for our list of monthly bills for the month of June, we had our routine bills as well as we had our HVAC through the ESSER project. The Chrome that Daryl and Kiva mentioned tonight with what was put in. The Chromebooks, we have transportation software, student and fiscal software, the fourth quarter payments, AP tests, and then auxiliary and grant fund payments. Other items on the fiscal consent are for then and now certificates. We have 4 payments that are over $3,000 that need approval tonight to be paid. We also have the ESSER 3 or the ARP that was received for $24 million that we need to appropriate so that we can start utilizing that federal grant. And then we have change funds for athletics and food service so they can get started for the school year that we need to approve tonight. So with that, I ask the board to approve the fiscal consent items as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions at all? Fiscal consent items passed 5-0. That brings us to 9-1, resolutions of approving the granting of tax increment funding.
Yes, so this is the Colerain Township has sent us a letter indicating their interest in 7 TIF districts. They're asking the board to approve these 30-year make-whole TIF residential and commercial TIF districts. So with that, I recommend that the Board of Education approve the resolutions approving the grants of 7 residential and commercial 30-year make-whole TIF incremental financing exemptions.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Are there any questions? What is the dollar amount to this 7? Do we have any idea?
Once fully phased in, the approximate amount is about $1 million a year in annual revenue.
Okay. And that passes 5-0.
Next, I have the acceptance of the fiscal 21 final amended certificate as approved by the Hamlin County Budget Commission. So with that, I'd like to ask the board to accept the fiscal year 21 final amended certificate for $188.9 million as approved by the Hamlin County Budget Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions? Passes 5-0.
Okay, and just with the final, we send our appropriation resolution, final appropriation resolution the board passed in June to the County Budget Commission. They look at that, they certify our estimated resource amended receipts back. Beginning of the year, we send our temporary appropriations that the board approved in May, as well as our ending fund balances to the Hamlin County Budget Commission. They make sure our revenue is with resources, balances plus estimated receipts are above our appropriations, our temporary appropriations in May, and then they certify that back. So I'm asking that the board accept the official certificate of estimated resources for $188.6 million as approved by the Hamlin County Budget Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Okay, that brings us to 10.1, end of year harassment, intimidation, and bullying report.
So twice a year, we provide the board an update on where we are in terms of complaints around harassment, intimidation, and bullying. This is actually the presentation for the end of last school year, so I'm going to allow Dustin to come up and present the final report and give a summary.
Good evening.
Hi, Daryl. Dustin.
We got one response, just one. Good evening, everyone. Each year at the midpoint and the end of the year, we report out on harassment, intimidation, bullying for parents that have, or students that have completed the form that would make things a bit more official. This is beyond just, hey, someone's bothering me, but rather I'm going to submit a form to our administration, and the administration will actually do an investigation regarding that and go deeper into it. As always is the case, and if you've been with us and heard this same conversation before, always pushing parents to fill out that form if there's an issue between peers. We want to know what's happening. A lot of times, as you can imagine, they come to the office, and we welcome that as well. They speak with the principal or the assistant principal, and the assistant principal or principal takes care of it. And they'll meet with the kids, pull a restorative circle, and solve the problem. What you see here in these numbers, which you have indicated in front of you, are those that actually completed the form, it was submitted, investigated, and the outcome of that. Not a surprise, numbers are pretty low overall, because of course we know that the students, many were remote, and also our discipline was way down last year for lots and lots of reasons. And so with that, we also see a reduced number there. But to be completely transparent, we often see low numbers in this report comparable to our population size. We have a school, a district of 9,000 students. You would anticipate there's going to be peer-to-peer relational problems. What we're asking and always asking is that people complete that form. You can do it online. There's an electronic version. You can go to the office. There's a paper one there. There's also in the student handbook. Lots of places to get the form to submit that. But more important than anything, as always is the case, asking parents to work with our administration to let us know what's going on so we can take action, and our principals do. They absolutely do. What this represents is those who submitted the form and then the outcome of that, whether it be yes, it did reach the threshold of harassment, intimidation, bullying, or no, it didn't quite reach that threshold. And what my principals will say to a parent is, listen, that situation didn't meet that level. However, we're still going to help you because we may have still seen some mistreatment. It may not have met the level of pervasive. It may not have met the level of severe. But it definitely was there, and they work with our parents and our kiddos to get those problems taken care of. And this past year was no different than the years in the past. Questions on that?
And those that don't meet that severity don't make this report?
That's correct. They still get the attention of the administration. They still work very, very hard to solve those concerns, absolutely. It just doesn't show up here.
Do we have that data compiled anywhere as far as what doesn't make, or is it?
So I could pull the codes and tell you how often we have a disrespect a student at a 100 or a 200 level code, for sure. We always have that available to us.
Okay.
But not everything reaches that, so we have a
Sure.
lot that don't even meet the threshold where it is in an office for a potential discipline situation. Our teachers and our counselors do a phenomenal job of working with students on relationships all the time, and so we're proactive in a lot of ways to try to head things off and make sure that we're building positive relationships and reinforcing that, but then dealing with it when it doesn't get rectified at the level closest to the situation. Sure.
And just final for me, just another push, those who can hear me as well, to ensure that our parents are looking for that form and completing it. We want to hear about what's going on so we can chase down those concerns, because we know that when kids feel safe and they feel secure, they're going to grow the most. And so we want to know what's going on. We love to see it through the form, but we know they're good communicators with their principals otherwise as well.
And that form is located where?
It's on the website, it's in every office, it's in the handbook. We have it in multiple places.
Great.
And if they can't get a hold of it, then all they got to do is call the principal. Can you give me the form? Absolutely. We have it available in all kinds of ways.
It used to be on the very front page of our website at one point.
There was a button at one point, and we did switch website companies. It's still available. However, it's not that clear button. It's just a little bit different.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dustin.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to some Neola board policy revisions.
We do have a revision to our wellness policy. This is updated by our food services department. So this is on here for information. If you have any questions, please let me know. It'll be on for action at the next meeting.
Okay. brings us to the Daryl Gator update.
So just a couple of things to just touch base on. I do want to address a few things around the diversity, equity, and inclusion. The board has adopted a strategic plan, and one of the focus areas is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I want to take a moment and kind of define what that strategic plan says and how we embody that and live that on a daily basis. I do want to clarify that it was brought up earlier that we have contract with the Racial Equity Institute, and we have not. So I just want to clarify that. Diversity for us is about understanding the unique identities of our students, our staff, and our parents and our community that we serve, and making sure that all of those identities are represented, celebrated, and recognized. And so that moves into the inclusivity piece, that once we recognize and celebrate those identities, that we actually make sure that our environments are welcoming and inclusive, and people not only feel like they're welcomed, but that they belong, that they feel like they are a part of the school and the classroom and the community and the district. And then for us, for equity, equity is about making sure that we provide what someone needs when they need it and how they need it, so that we can realize the potential of all of our students and staff and make sure that they have the resources and supports, whether it is a reading intervention or you are gifted and we're pushing you at the highest end, that those supports are in place to make sure that everybody realizes the maximum potential that they have. So that's how we define DEI in our district, and that's how we try to embrace that on a daily basis. I do want to make everyone aware that our transportation department has been working double time to make sure that routes are done, kids are have their bus stops, and bus passes are being mailed out tomorrow. So parents will be getting those bus passes as they are coming out. But reminder that buses do require masks because they are part of federal transportation guidelines. We did talk about a bunch of hires that we did. I do want to make a shameless plug that we still have open positions in the district for some of our intervention assistants. Intervention assistants are staff members who are working in classrooms supporting reading and math instruction at the elementary level. And so if you are someone that is called to do the work with kids, we encourage you to go to our website and apply for some of those open intervention assistant positions and join the Northwest family as an employee. We are, we did talk about masks. I do want to just reiterate that those are right now an option for everyone. It is a personal choice, and we respect the choice that families and students make, and that we'll make sure that environment is safe for everyone regardless of what choice they make. And then I just want to call out the fact that we are starting the school year in just a few days. Staff will be returning, students very shortly after. And there have been a myriad of people who have been working all summer long to make sure that schedules are set, that buildings are ready, that food is ready to be delivered, and buses are ready to roll. And so I just want to call out all of the work that has happened over the summer for all of our employee groups who have been working all summer to make sure that everything is done and ready and in the most pristine shape for our parents for open house and our students when they arrive in the building, so that it is not only a safe and welcoming environment, but it is an environment that they are proud to be a part of. So I do want to call out all of our staff who have worked all summer long to make those things a reality. So I do appreciate everything they have done. Thank you.
Question.
Sure.
So I send my daughter to school and I want her to wear a mask. And I want the teachers to help with that compliance with my student. Is that possible? How does that work? Have you guys thought through that process?
So our staff will be able to remind students. We're not going to discipline students for not wearing masks when parents tell them to, but we would ask that our staff communicate to parents. So if you do communicate that you want your child to wear a mask and they are not doing it during the school day, you should be communicated that, hey, your daughter's not wearing the mask the way you would have liked her to. So we will make sure their communication is there so that you can reinforce that expectation at home.
Is there like something that they send at the beginning of the school year that says, I want to participate in my child wearing a mask, or is it something that they just work with their children?
Yeah, there's not a way to declare that,
Okay.
so it would be something that you individually work with your student, and you can follow up with the teacher. Did they wear their mask? This is my personal choice.
Great. And I just want to add one more to the HR piece. We see a new face on our committee here. This is Michelle Walker. She's our new HR director. With Daryl assuming the new superintendent position, he wore many hats prior to his appointment to superintendent, and so we brought in this very experienced lady if you want to share a little bit about your history, that would be great.
Oh, you don't really want me to go.
We don't have to go all the way back to like kindergarten, but like, she has a very strong HR history and education. It's very impressive.
18 years in public school HR, and, whoa, I'll say 6 years as an HR consultant in Mason and Springboro and Mount Healthy. I think that's it. North College Hill.
I wasn't trying to put you on the spot. New face.
Thank
Michelle
you.
is
Thank you.
a huge asset to our
Sure.
team, and we are just thankful that she has not decided to fully retire yet. So we are thankful that she's giving us a year, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, let's not give her a reason to.
We've heard great things about you, so welcome.
Thank you.
Each year, we have to appoint a delegate and an alternate for the annual business meeting in Columbus. This year, Matt Teesort will be the delegate, and what the delegate does is goes to the business meeting. They talk about policy revisions or new policy additions or removals. It's in a very large room with a very large group of people, and you get to practice standing up and sitting down and being oppositional, if you like. I will be the alternate in the event that Matt gets sidebarred somehow and can't attend. So that is our appointment this year. Do you need anything else, Amy? Vote? Oh, yep, vote. We need a motion and a second for that, please.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Yeah, vote. That vote. Great. Everybody's in favor. And that brings us to board member comments. Joe?
Okay, I met with some of the people from CRT. Pretty nice people, very personable. I want to give you a little personal history, and this will only take a little bit of time. In 1942, my parents were thrown or forced into prison camps for 3.5 years because the U.S. was at war with Japan. My parents, brother, and sister are American or were American citizens at the time, and their 14th Amendment rights under the U.S. Constitution were violated and denied. I don't think anybody on this board has ever experienced what I personally have gone through. First thing is, being a varsity high school basketball rep, I have been called a Jap mother, you know the rest of it, after games. The word Jap was written on my car after a game that I officiated. Last year, a woman in the presence of my son said, "You shouldn't even be allowed in this country." While teaching at Walnut Hills, the elective to seniors, the Nazi swastika was put on my desk with permanent marker. And the fifth thing is, I've had a person who works in the store that I frequently patronize say in the presence of workers and other patrons, "It's your fault that we had the pandemic." I have created a course to back up a little bit. When I taught at Walnut Hills, I created a course, an elective course for seniors called Ethnic Studies. It was a survey course, the good and the bad, of different ethnic groups. I have read John Hope Franklin, From Slavery to Freedom. I have read Leonard Peltier, Prison Writings. I have read and actually met Peter Irons, Justice at War. And I have seen documentaries on Cesar Chavez in his fight to unionize American farm workers. Does racism exist in the United States? Yes. But do we rearrange the district curriculum to meet the CRT demands? No. CRT should not be a disruption to the mandates set by the state of Ohio and the goals set by the Northwest School District. The This is a very sensitive topic and needs to be dealt with. I have proposed a senior course in high school, an elective, modeled after the course I taught at Walnut Hills High School. And 3 of the 4 board members endorsed my proposal. Once again, this is a very sensitive topic and needs to be dealt with in a logical and rational way. Let's all be reasonable and please start communicating with each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
Just a couple things. Michelle, I want to welcome you. Appreciate you coming to our district in our need. And then Daryl and Kiva, great job on the presentation. I really appreciate it. And I want to thank the speakers that came up and spoke and gave their opinions and that on the CRT. And I appreciate your time coming out to the board meeting. And that's it. Great.
Pam?
Real quick, also, Michelle, very excited you're here. Just want to remind everybody, in addition to everything that's going on with keeping up with all day-to-day, how things are changing with the masks and so on and so forth, there's been a lot of people working very hard to prepare for the health and safety fair that is on Wednesday. And if you've never had a chance to stop up at Northgate, it's pretty amazing. Kids in this district get provided free haircuts. We have dentists that do dental cleanings and checking. School supplies. It's just a really neat way to back to school for the entire community. So I want to thank everybody that's been working behind the scenes on that, and that will continue to do that all day on Wednesday because it really does help out our families. And I want to echo too. I want to thank all 5 of the speakers. Everybody has a right to speak. Everybody has a right to their opinion, and I want to thank all of you for coming.
Okay. I'll start off with, before I forget, good luck to all these Butler Tech students. They start back tomorrow. So you'll be seeing Northwest school buses transporting our students from the high schools to the Butler Tech campuses tomorrow. And along with that, good luck to the rest of the district. Starts on 19th, if I'm not, August 19th, right. And I think the high schools are phasing in, the different schools. And welcome to the district, Mrs. Walker. And thank you to all 5 of the speakers that spoke tonight. And while I don't agree with CRT, and I don't want it in our schools, it's not in our schools. And I caution to be careful to just blanketly dismiss any of the works that we're doing with diversity. And I think somebody mentioned like DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. That we can watch that and how we go forward, but there's some good that comes out of that too as well. And I think it's important that we have a welcoming atmosphere, that we're inclusive to all students, we're inclusive to all of our staff. Part of our hiring practices is we're looking for a wider pool to choose from, and the best candidates of that pool. And we want all minority candidates to feel welcome to come work at Northwest Local School District. They lose my thought there. Something else that comes to mind is, for example, is how we as a district need to evolve and react. Is we had an incident a few years ago at one of our schools. Our music program had a policy that was discriminating against natural hair, and we as a district reacted to that and evolved and became more inclusive and more accepting of all. And I think that's all I have to say tonight. Thank you.
Great. First, welcome, Michelle. Kiva, Daryl, thank you for the presentation. There's been a lot of work and research gone into that decision, and especially thank you for petitioning the parents and the staff so that they do have buy-in and it's not a faux listened, and so I appreciate that. Second, thank you for all the speakers who came. You know, I do want to say that when Christine Colliver spoke, she has requested a lot of information, and the district has been incredibly transparent, and I want to thank you for that. And I encourage that for anybody. Please don't assume that something has happened. Do your work, do your due diligence, do your investigation. Anything that we have that is public record, we will certainly provide that for you. I personally don't see anybody trying to hide anything from anybody. So with that, this is the community school district. They have a right to speak, and we certainly need to petition their feedback on their fears, their wants, their needs, etc. Pam, thanks for reminding about the fair. Saturday also, if anybody's interested, there's a Community Connect Day at Colerain High School from 8 to 12, where everybody will be kind of sprucing up the campus a little bit, show up with gloves, and probably some bottled water would be there. And then just looking forward to the start of the school year. I think it's exciting. I think it's certainly a very big different start of the school year than last year. Hopefully there's some level of normalcy that will be obtainable. And with that, that's all I have. Anything else, guys? With that, we'll adjourn the meeting. Do I have a motion in a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion in a second. And we all agree, we'll end the meeting. Thank you for everybody for participating and coming to observe the meeting.